Welcome back to The Verdict. Welcome to live from our studios in Lagos. We'll bring you all things about the 2019 general elections. It's election eve. Now we'll turn our attention to the expectations, and we'll keep assessing the preparedness of the Electoral Commission. In the studios, we've since been joined by Asikia Karibi-White, who is a senior lecturer in University of Lagos. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
This afternoon, I beg your pardon. And wait a minute. Yes, it's just afternoon. We also do have Mr. Chuguma still here with us in Lagos, but now we have a new panel of analysts in Abuja. Abiodun Bayewo is the Executive Director of Global Rights, and sitting right beside him, we've got Samson Itodo, who is the head Youth Initiative for Advocacy, Growth and Advancement. Samson, good to see you again. Let me come to you, Ms. Karibi-White, on these preparations for elections. Having seen or heard the assessments, what INEC has spoken about, and the preparedness of security agencies as they've highlighted to us, what do you think of this whole scenario as we look forward to tomorrow?
Well, it looks a bit well settled from discussions that men and ladies have spoken about. But I think until we get to the date, that we can be sure of all the vibes that we're getting.
You're not convinced about what you've heard from all of those agencies responsible?
Not really. When the day comes, then you know how the boasting has gone. You know, right now we can fantasize, we can hope, we can, but on that day.
What are your own concerns? Do you have concerns?
Yes, I do. Concerns raised by everyone. The concerns of security. You know, how the politicians can tame their supporters. The police, he's saying they will tame their words, but will the politicians be able to tame their supporters? You know, that's one big question for me.
So logistics was a major concern, and that's one of the reasons why INEC had to postpone the elections, and will be going through the process tomorrow. In your view, having seen for the past 6 days of how INEC has been able to address some of those concerns, would you say that do you sit at a comfortable level now, looking at tomorrow, and has INEC performed above board, in your view, to suggest to anyone who is watching, or anyone who has a PVC and is encouraged to go out tomorrow to actually do that?
I think anyone coming up tomorrow might have a bit of a half-heart, you know, judging from what happened last week. Say, oh, let's go and see what's going to happen. The average person may not be too sure of what to expect again, judging from some of the feelers we had from the news. So it will just be, let's go and see.
Even though the INEC chairman has come out almost every day, coming out to have these briefings. Yeah. Hopefully there will be a briefing today again. We've heard from the police force representative, the PPRO. That's Frank Mba in our Abuja studios. We've also heard from him. We've heard from distinguished panelists also giving that reassurance. But you still have a little doubt. You call it a divided. Well, anybody going out tomorrow is practically divided.
Yes, you've used the correct word, reassurance. Is reassuring me and others that, okay, tomorrow it's going to be a good day. But there's still that apprehension as to what it might hold.
What particular catchment of the population are you?
You know, for those who have never voted before, or those who had voted in a long while and are just coming back, they may not be too persuaded. You know, it's been a long time, because I have a friend who voted last in 1983. Wow. And is just going to vote in this one.
Why the interest now? That from 1983 to this time, what kept him?
In 1983, that was the first time of attaining the age of voting. So, of course, you have that enthusiasm. And over the years, for one reason or the other, not really interested. But this time around, I said, no, I think I should come out to exercise my civic duty. such people might still be sitting on the sidelines, because of previous stories. Yes, there have been assurances from the INEC chairman, but you see, assurance is not just what you need alone.
Okay. Let's get to Abuja.
Yeah,
that's where the briefing comes from on a daily basis from INEC.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to take on Samson. One of the catchments that Ms. Karidu-Wise is concerned about is the youth catchment, which this year is a very, very deciding catchment.
51%.
That really is a lot. Do you see them ready, or do you think they still have the same concern that is being expressed here?
Well, thank you very much. There are concerns, but what is important is, because election is a human activity, and we expect that sometimes you've got issues that come in the results or in the course of managing elections. Those concerns are there. But is there enthusiasm? There is enthusiasm on the part of citizens, particularly young people, to cast their vote in these elections. One of the expectations that we had on the Electoral Commission is, out of the 72-point-something million people who collected their PVCs, they are the ones who were expecting to vote tomorrow. A disaggregation of that data will clearly tell us or show whether we have more women who have collected their PVCs, or more youth who've collected their PVCs, or persons with disability who've collected their PVCs. But what we've got now is just a lump sum, and we'll just look at the voters register and see what the disaggregation looks like. So there's enthusiasm. However, there are concerns, yes, relating to election logistics. Unlike last week, today we can see visibly deployment of materials to the local government areas. All through this week, we've also seen citizens and observers and party agents also part of the audit process of the Electoral Commission. But at the heart of this conversation is, in places where INEC has recorded shortfall in either result sheets or indelible ink or stamp, is INEC able to replace them before tomorrow, so we don't have cases or reports where there are materials that are insufficient at the polling station? The second is, the Court of Appeal has just issued a declaration on Zamfara, and we do expect that the Electoral Commission would also come out to make a pronouncement on what's going to happen to Zamfara. But it's clear that the APC is going to be on the ballot for tomorrow's elections. But INEC needs to come out and tell stakeholders, so voters in Zamfara, whether young or old, will know where they stand. And we expect that in today's briefing, INEC will make a statement on this issue following the order by the Court of Appeal. But above all, I am very optimistic that citizens are going to come out tomorrow to cast their vote, and would like to assure them, as citizens observers, to come out en masse, because the postponement indeed tested our resilience and patriotism, and all those naysayers and doomsayers who think that this election will not hold and citizens will not have an opportunity to exercise their franchise. Tomorrow is an opportunity to put them to shame. Let us come out en masse, vote, but after voting, wait at the polling station to protect your mandate in a civil and peaceful manner, and if possible, follow the results from the polling units to the ward collation centers, because the vigilance that we require will come from citizens if these 2019 elections will be free, fair, and credible.
Samson, thank you. I want to go to Biodun. Samson used two words: enthusiasm and concern. How do you, there are 47.14% of voters on the voter register of INEC. Which of them is higher for this catchment, enthusiasm or concern?
I'm sorry, I missed your question.
There are 47.14% of voters who are female All right, and Samson there has used two words which have come up here, enthusiasm and concern. Which one is more for this catchment, for the females, enthusiasm or concern, or both?
I think it's more of concern. I think that the women voters are concerned about being able to exercise their franchise. They're concerned about safety, because security is still a very, very big issue with our elections in Nigeria, and it seems to snowball, and in a highly volatile and heated contestation as we have right now, you would have incidents of violence, especially with the other context of ongoing violence across the country. And so, yes, there's a lot of enthusiasm, and yes, there's a lot of concern as well. So it's being able to manage both, and being able to ensure that we take the high ground as a country and exercise our franchise, even for women.
You know, it's a significant figure for women going into the 2019 general elections, and if you say concern, it might as well weigh as much as the, what you call it, enthusiasm. But how would you then say the thoughts of the women are, because they wield that huge percentage going into tomorrow? Would you say that the women, for instance, feel a moral obligation, a sense of nationhood to build on the successes that we have had in previous elections to ensure that this election coming up tomorrow and the governorship that will come up in 2 weeks after tomorrow, would you say that the women are resolute to ensure that they come out tomorrow and cast their votes because they matter very importantly in this election?
Women are resolute, and yes, like I said, they are very concerned about being able to exercise their franchise, and that's where the enthusiasm is, and being able to dictate what direction the country goes. The country has largely been ruled and the direction dictated by men, and then women feel that this is a time when we must as well act as citizens in this country and take up the office of the citizens and act. And so you've got coalitions of women as well, encouraging more women to come out to vote, encourage women to protect the vote, encourage women to be the ambassadors of peace in these elections.
How does it appear for you as watching the scene and everything that is happening when you consider that one of the presidential candidates, who happens to be a woman, Dr. Oby Ezekwesili, pulled out of the race almost halfway through? But how does that affect the women folk? Is it that the women cannot really come up with a candidate that will perhaps be seen as the game changer?
The world is not, we should realize when we should desegregate by gender and by personality. Nigeria will eventually have a female president. Now, Ms. Oby Ezekwesili had dropped out of the race, and she had stated the reasons why she dropped out of the race. She didn't go into the race because she was female. Now, it was a good thing that she was female, because he also said that Nigerian women were coming to a point and a threshold in our national life where women would have a voice. But she did not drop out of the race because she was female, neither did she enter the race because she was female. She had gone into the race because she had a vision of what Nigeria could be and should be, and she was willing to take Nigeria to that point. Now, there were barriers, and hopefully by the next election we would have more women, not just aspiring to presidential office, but for governorship level, at local government levels, and at the ward levels. So this is a start. We're starting to break the glass ceiling.
Mr. Chukwuma, going by these demographics again, we are hoping, and I completely agree with Ms. Bayo there, that one day we will have a woman, we have had, you know, here and there, particularly in the National Assembly. Most of the time when we talk about general elections, we look at the executive elections. We don't pay particular attention to that #1 arm of government, which is the legislature. How does that affect us in the long run, and what should people know now?
I think it's essentially because the legislative arm of the government has been an arm that has faced historical challenges. If you look at our democratic journey since independence, you will see that the executive and judicial arm have been consistent in office, regardless of whether it's democratic regime or military regime. The legislative arm have sort of been an interregnum arm of the government. That is one. So it's the arm that has had the least institutional presence since our independence. And then the other thing, particularly in this republic, again, a lot of people ascribe it to so many factors, but the thing is that the legislative arm have not really stepped up in terms of asserting itself on issues that matter to the people, which is good governance, which is ensuring that the other arms, particularly the executive, are held accountable on issues, I must underline that fact, issues that matter to the people. They come across as an arm that is perhaps a little more up in arms when something that affects them, that comes up. But that is not to undermine their significance. And linking that to the question you asked about representation of women and eventual election of a woman president in Nigeria, I should say it's not something that happens by accident. It's actually something that is designed by policy and by legislation for that trajectory to increase. Take, for instance, our neighboring countries here, Senegal. In 2010, they adopted a parity policy that enabled, in 2012, when they had the election, for women to constitute 43% of the parliament.
But a lot of work must have gone.
A lot of is because that it was stated that every party must field equal candidates in terms of gender.
There was legislation.
It was legislation. The same thing happened in Rwanda, where you have about 63%. Now, that is one trajectory, parity policy. But there's also proportional representation, which was recommended by the West Commission, but was rejected.
Yeah, but is that going to happen in the presidential system?
I mean, parity policy.
No, proportional representation.
Yeah, it was one of the recommendation of the West Commission. And what is proportional representation is how you show in the election. If you get to this threshold of voters voting for you, then you are entitled to a seat.
Because some argue that perhaps that may not necessarily sit well, because competence should be the driver in this case. And then when we have to get to the point where we have to, give some allocations percentage-wise to women, not saying anything against the women, with due respect.
You can't afford to, in fact.
I'll be in for it if I go home. But shouldn't competence be the driver? Women seen as deserving and capable, have the capacity to occupy government positions, go through the process, campaign as everyone else will, and then get elected into office.
Gimba, if I didn't know you well, I would have taken that as a gender slur. It's akin to what the president said recently when he went on a campaign, and they asked him, why is it that all the security agencies in this country are headed by people from a particular party? He said, oh, I appoint people based on merit. And people are like, oh, you mean in this other part, you can't find a competent person who can hold that position? The same thing can be said here. And also, let me tell you, even what we enjoy today as men being represented in these various arms is by virtue of the opportunities we have. Don't forget, in 1924, to vote in this country, which was when we had the first election, you have to, one, be a taxable adult. And then you have to have a cumulative income, a minimum of £300. And only 14,000 people qualified for this election. And he held in only 2 colonies, because the rest of the countries were protectorates, Lagos and Calabar. So would that mean, would you say, oh, that it was only these 14,000 people that were qualified to vote, or because of the criteria and the procedure put in place, excluded vast number, the vast percentage of, the same thing can be said here. You know, men have had historical advantages. And it was only in 1954 election that we had universal franchise. Because even in the 1924, women couldn't vote.
You said advantage. Has Africa not also been labeled as patriarchal?
Yeah, because...
Consequently, better advantaged, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, but the patriarchal system privileges the male folks. But again, in places like Cross River, particularly the Effiks, it's actually more matriarchal. So you're actually agreeing with me that all this put in place, the patriarchal system, the sort of legislation we have in place, and also the historical advantage men have had since universal franchise was introduced, coalesce to give them advantage. And if we remember that it took legislation to put you and I, Africans, on the ballot, would you be asking for too much to create the kind of environment that will ensure that more women are represented?
Well, he can't afford to ask for anything right now because we need to go to break. But we'll come back to this in a moment. Stay with us.